Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Doyle. This is the Verdigris Table, where I teach you how to play Dungeons & Dragons, how to be a better player, and eventually how to take your turn behind the Dungeon Master screen. Today we are talking about proficiency. Now, proficiency seems pretty simple. It's sitting in its own little box up there in the character sheet, +2 at level 1. But I find it confuses people a lot of the time. You know, ability scores I get, but this proficiency bonus, well, like, where does this come from? What is this doing? So if your ability scores are your DNA or your nature, then proficiency is your nurture, right? You may be strong, right? Maybe you have the body of a football player or a basketball player or a swimmer or a gymnast or whatever. But without practice, without training, then you're probably not going to be as good at those sports as you would be otherwise, just based on natural ability. So your proficiency bonus is representing how much better the character is at whatever trait, whatever skill, whatever save, whatever weapon we're talking about. So in D&D terms, if we're intelligent, we're more likely to know some fact about history. So our intelligence modifier would go into that, like, history check. But if we have studied history, then that proficiency bonus as well is going into that check, right? There's raw intelligence, and then there's time on task, there's training, there's practice. I think part of the reason, particularly new players, but even experienced players, have a little bit of trouble with proficiency is that there's not that much about it in the player's handbook. You know, it's in there, but it's a pretty quick blurb. You do get a little bit more in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I'm putting links to both of those down below. If you're going to be playing this game for any length of time, you definitely want your hands on a copy of the player's handbook that's going to have whatever, your spells, everything to build different kinds of characters. The Dungeon Master's Guide is pretty much a must-have if you're going to be running this game, and one day I hope you will. But yeah, my link is down below, and I get a little bit of cut of that action. If you want to go visit your friendly neighborhood game shop and support them by picking up a copy there, then please, with my blessings, go do that as well. Your proficiency bonus is determined by your level. So at level 1, it's a +2, and then that's going to go up at 5, 9, 13, 17 if you get that far. And it is an abstract way to measure how much better you are at the things that you are good at through repetition. So for instance, saving throws are determined by our ability scores, but the 2 saves that we are proficient in, we also get to add in our proficiency modifier. The same thing applies to skills. As we build our character and choose our background and our class, we're going to get to select what skills we are proficient in. Our class is also giving us proficiency with weapons. So if you are a warlock, for instance, and proficient with simple weapons, you get to add your proficiency bonus to your attack when you're using a simple weapon, but not when you are using a martial weapon because you are not proficient in that. A little confusingly, we're also getting proficiency from our class in whatever kind of armor. But your proficiency bonus isn't part of your armor class, isn't part of your AC. So our characters can also be proficient in instruments and tools. So one classic example is thieves' tools, right? If our rogue is trying to pick a lock, then they're using their dexterity modifier, right? Because it's dexterity, it's how agile your fingers are. And if they're proficient with thieves' tools, then they're also adding that proficiency bonus. So the dexterity modifier and the proficiency bonus are both getting added to the roll of the d20 to determine whether or not they succeeded or failed, right? So you compare that result, you add those numbers together. I know it sounds like a lot of math, but whatever, 18 plus 5, whatever, hypothetically, compared to the DC, to the difficulty class. How hard is this lock to pick, right? So if our, 23 is higher than the DC, which let's say it was 20, pretty hard, but our rogue is nasty, then yes, they have successfully picked the lock. Unfortunately, they forgot to check for traps, and everybody make a dexterity saving throw. Hope you're proficient. So that's it for proficiency bonus. Simple, maybe not always easy, but simple. I find it can be useful to remind ourselves that our character sheet is just an abstraction. It's not the character itself, it's the map, not the territory. All these numbers are just here to facilitate play. They're here to help us determine the outcome of whatever our character is attempting. I know for beginners watching whatever tutorials like this, it can seem like Dungeons and Dragons is a game of figuring out like what goes where in this little puzzle and doing all this math. But all of that is like front-loaded work in order to play the game and make it easy. So, if you're having some difficulty with this stuff, you can actually just go down in the description to my website and grab a character sheet. And you won't have to worry about this building block stuff. And honestly, it's probably easier for you to play the game a couple times and then come back and build your own character. If you don't want to use a character that I made in these videos, you can also go to the Wizards of the Coast site. I'm going to put a link down there, and they have their own character sheets, which you can, pick up, print out, and run with. The ones on my website are actually formatted the way you're going to find most other character sheets are formatted. Those OG Wizards of the Coast ones, or whatever, just laid out differently. They're not built differently numerically or whatever, but just they're very different than most character sheets you're going to find in like the PHP or wherever else. And honestly, maybe that's appealing to you. Maybe it makes more sense for beginners to look at one of those. Either way, take your pick. Get out there and have fun. Play this game and enjoy it. And be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. And I'll see you next time.